Welcome back to The Vocalist. Today we are listening to Gordon Lightfoot again, this time with the song Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Here we go.
The legend lives on from the Chippewa on down of the big lake they call Gitchagumi. The lake, it is said, never gives up her dead when the skies of November turn gloomy. With a load of iron ore, 26,000 tons more than the Edmund Fitzgerald weighed empty. That good ship and true was a bone to be chewed when the gales of November came early. The ship was the pride of the American side, coming back from some mill in Wisconsin. As the big freighters go, it was bigger than most, with a crew and good captain well seasoned, concluding some terms with a couple of steel firms when they left fully loaded for Cleveland. Then later that night when the ship's bell rang, could it be the north wind they'd been feeling?
Oh golly, there's already a lot happening vocally, and I could already sense myself just getting sucked into the story, so I want to cover that first so that I have permission later to just get swept away. Something that I appreciate, and I remember the first time hearing him, his tone stood out, like that really rich, warm sound. There's like this gorgeous depth to his tone, which I just love in general. But the songs I've heard thus far, when you're so focused on storytelling, the repetition or the idea of using something that's strophic and just repeating the same melody over and over again, I think is just really smart, because as a listener, I think that helps you listen more intently to the text rather than your ears, sort of waiting for whatever might come next musically. If you establish that consistent pattern, it's just easier to say, at least for me to say to myself, okay, this is how the song's gonna go. So now I don't have to worry about any shift or change musically that will distract me from the words I'm hearing. I also don't know if this was intentional, but the onset here, this introduction musically, with this sort of, it's got kind of a, I don't know, it's making me think of water, of waves, like that ebb and flow. I don't know if that was intentional, but perhaps it could have been, given the scene takes place on a Great Lake.
The legend lives on from the Chippewa on down.
So that beautiful depth, we're hearing that at the beginning of this when he first starts, but when he says from, I think.
The legend lives on from
No, on. The legend lives on. It's much more nasal compared to how he started. And I enjoy that. Yes, there's a time for everything to be balanced and stay kind of in the same position, but when you're telling a story, this makes me feel like he is far more focused on the lyrics and the story as opposed to his vocal technique and how everything sounds. Let me do that one more time.
The legend lives on from the Chippewa on down of the big lake they call Gitchagumi. The lake, it is said, never gives up her dead.
This is when it started to shift in pronunciation. Never. A lot of the ending R sounds are very pronounced. And I mean that in that they stand out for me as opposed to just saying never, never. There's like a lot of emphasis on that sound.
When the skies of November turn gloomy, with a load of iron ore 26,000 tons more than the Edmund Fitzgerald weighed empty. That good ship and true was a bone to be chewed when the gales of November came early. The ship was the pride of the American side, coming back from some mill in Wisconsin. As the big freighters go, it was bigger than most, with a crew and good captain well seasoned.
Most seasoned. I love these ending consonants. His diction is just awesome. I mean, and it's important when you're doing, especially in like a folk genre, I believe, when the story is, I don't know, I think that is like the priority for most, maybe with a few exceptions. And so it's really enjoyable to hear all of this nuance in his pronunciation, like in those ending ER sounds, but for him to still be very precise and intentional with these ending consonants.
Concluding some terms with a couple of steel firms when they left fully loaded for Cleveland. Then later that night when the ship's bell rang, could it be the north wind they'd been feeling?
I'm enjoying the combination of acoustic and electric in this arrangement. I'm sure it would sound beautiful if it was only acoustic, but it gives this kind of, not like ominous ambience, but maybe something that feels a little foreboding or unsettling.
The wind in the wires made a tattletale sound, and the wave broke over the railing. And every man knew, as the captain did too, 'twas the witch of November come stealing.
There isn't a huge dynamic shift happening, but I do appreciate that tiny added level of volume. In addition to that, his singing is it feels so focused, like laser focused. We're not getting a lot of vibrato, so it doesn't feel like he's settling into any of the notes. It feels like he's just really this gorgeous driving force throughout every phrase and every line. So there's a slight pressed sound. It just feels so controlled and so focused.
The dawn came late and the breakfast had to wait when the gales of November came slashing. When afternoon came, it was freezing rain in the face of a hurricane west wind. Supper time came, the old cook came on deck saying, "Fellas, it's too rough to feed you." At 7 p.m. a main hatchway caved in. He said, "Fellas, it's been good to know you." The captain wired in, he had water coming in, and the good ship and crew was in peril. later that night, when his lights went out of sight, came the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Does anyone know where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes to hours?
Oh, wow. I thought there was going to be a lot less left. Let me back this up to this verse. I like that he shared the perspective of the men on board. Obviously, you know, well, actually, I don't know. I'll have to look it up. I don't know if there was any sort of like radio call to confirm what was said. I'm assuming he was just giving voice to these men. And I like that we got kind of an inside story, like as if you were on the ship to witness that, because otherwise it does feel kind of just, I don't know, like an outsider looking in. And I think that particular line just made it feel that much more real, and sort of, at least for me, it made me think about what it could have been like to experience that. Obviously, you know, I can't speak to that experience, but it just to get you one step closer to that, as opposed to just reflecting on the tragedy as a whole, if that makes sense.
Does anyone know where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes to hours? The searchers all say they'd have made Whitefish Bay if they'd put 15 more miles behind her. They might have split up or they might have capsized. They may have broke deep and took water. And all that remains is the faces and the names of the wives and the sons and the daughters. Lake Huron rolls, Superior sings in the rooms of her ice-water mansion. Old Michigan steams like a young man's dreams. The islands and bays are for sportsmen. And farther below, Lake Ontario takes in what Lake Erie can send her. The iron boats go, as the mariners all know, with the gales of November remembered. In a musty old hall in Detroit they prayed in the Maritime Sailors' Cathedral. The church bell chimed till it rang 29 times for each man on the Edmund Fitzgerald. And the legend lives on from the Chippewa on down of the big lake they call Gitchagumi. Superior, they said, never gives up her dead when the gales of November come early.
As we were nearing the end, I started reflecting on other songs that were written about big events, in some cases tragedies, and I think a lot of times those songs are written from the perspective of an individual and their response to what has taken place and how they felt. And I do think that's important, but when it comes to this, just, I don't know, it rings so true to folk music to me, because he's presenting facts. He's telling a story, and that's how, in obviously now we have the internet, we can look things up, but a lot of important stories, important events that have taken place, the knowledge of that had to be passed down, and one way of doing that is through song, and we don't experience that very often. So I think it's just, it's just a remarkable piece, and it made me realize how few songs like this are out there. I also don't know what sort of news coverage this wreck had at the time, and so just shedding light on a situation and bringing attention to it, I think, is also super important. There's so many things that happen in the world every day, and I know it's difficult to keep track of all of them. So if by chance this wasn't, I don't know, televised or that's a bad word. Not the event itself, but just the news of the event wasn't televised, or people weren't reading about it in newspapers or anything like that. Imagine, hearing the song and finding out everything that happened so recently. I don't know. This one's making me think. Lastly, I appreciate that, he drew attention to those left behind, because that is oh golly, I don't want to, I've done too many emotional reactions lately. But yes, that is something that is just important to honor, I guess, that, not only did all of these men lose their lives, but there are families who lost someone very important to them. So, and through it all, he gave us a lot of incredible vocal tones, and there was a lot of nuance, and everything he did, I feel, really served the text. So the whole thing is just a very special piece, and has now made me want to learn more about the Edmund Fitzgerald. So we're going to leave it at that. But thank you guys so much for this recommendation and for watching with me, and hopefully I will see you next time.